Tremaine Jackson's words this offseason, his first offseason as the head coach of Prairie View A&M, have put a spotlight directly on the Panthers, and he isn't walking away from any of his comments. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We wrap up today's episode by taking a look at Norfolk State's predicted fall off in next year's basketball season. Segment 2, we're going to do something new. We're going to have something brand new, and that's a little bit of a Monday mailbag. And I picked some comments over last week to respond to today. But segment 1 starts off with something that I'll be honest with you. I hate to like the Prairie View A&M coach. I don't really like to like this guy. He's a Texas Southern guy through and through. Don't get me wrong now. But he's still the rival head coach at the moment. But I do like Tremaine Jackson. I think I've said this before. I think I have articulated this before, but I am very much so a fan of the way that Tremaine Jackson has operated and has continued to operate every step of the way. I would say the one thing I didn't like was some of those recruiting rules, but if we're talking about 10 actions and I wasn't a big fan of one, probably even half of that, right? Like half or one of his actions, he's doing a pretty good job as a first-year head coach. I would say that Tremaine Jackson is putting a spotlight on Prairie View A&M with his outspoken nature. I think that outspoken is one that he cannot deny. We've seen some, or he has expressed that he has heard and seen some comments that have called him cocky. He doesn't like that. I don't believe that outspoken has any sort of connotation, positive or negative. I think it's just a term, and he has spoken a lot. That's undeniable. It's almost a fact that he has been outspoken in his first offseason as the Prairie View A&M head coach. So I think that he has put a spotlight on it. One thing I was going to say was braggadocious. I said, nah, that's not it. That's not it. Braggadocious isn't the word. Then I was going to say, I would go with boastful. And I think boastful is actually a pretty accurate description of what Coach Jackson has been doing all year. But I wanted to look it up. I even went to Merriam-Webster, right? I had to look up the denotative meaning of boastful. Because to me, boastful is one of those on the fence type of descriptions. It could be really bad. It could be just a term. I view it as just a term, but I wanted to look to see what the definition said. Because he says, I get accused of being cocky. It's not my fault that I really believe what I believe. Okay, so look, this is what boastful means. To praise oneself extravagantly in speech, speak of oneself with excessive pride, to possess and often call attention to something that is a source of pride. You take out the term excessive, because that sounds bad. If you take out the word excessive, this is exactly what it is that Tremaine Jackson has been doing all year. And it has put the spotlight on Prairie View A&M. And I love it for them if I was a neutral party. And I can take that hat off. I can take it off at any time. I choose to not take the Texas Southern hat off at times. But right now, let's do that. I think that this is great for PV. If you look as far as recruiting goes, they had the number one recruiting class per 24/7. Obviously, we know that you can go somewhere else. I seen that FAMU had the number one recruiting class, but I had never heard of the publication or whatever that said that. I was familiar with 24/7. So that's more so the reason on why I praise that. But recruiting can be different depending on where you go. As far as 24/7 is concerned, PV had the best recruiting class. Do I think that that has to do with the boastful, outspoken, very direct nature that we've seen from Tremaine Jackson all off season? 100%. The Tremaine Jackson that you see publicly, I without a doubt believe is the same Tremaine Jackson that the recruits get to see privately, because he's very much so direct. Listen what he says. I get accused of being cocky. It's not my fault that I really believe what I believe. Let's be real. 90% of people are probably going to call that cocky. Full transparency, I'm a part of the 10. I don't really like calling people cocky. I don't. I think that it insinuates that they don't deserve to be confident. So I'm not going to call people cocky. It's not a term that you'll hear me use a lot. I'm sure I'll say it occasionally, but not a lot. But it's good for recruiting. It's good for recruiting, because if he really does believe what he believes and he steps out and says, I don't want to be a good SWAC team, I want to be a good FCS team, I want to be a true contender, you can tell he actually wants to be in the FCS playoffs, but he understands that that will require for him to have the second best season in his own division. So probably the third best season in the SWAC. That's the interesting thing about coaches who want to go to the playoffs. That's really the interesting thing about people who like the playoffs in general, but are in the SWAC and the MEAC. If you love the playoffs and you want your school to be in the playoffs, you have to also want your school not to win the conference. And I don't think anybody wants to play in the playoffs more than they want to win in their conference. So I don't think that you'll see Tremaine Jackson or any fans loudly claiming they want to be in the playoffs. But Jackson will say, I want to do that if the SWAC championship is not on the table. He truly believes he can build that type of program in Prairie View, Texas. And when you step into the room with somebody who truly believes that, in the heart of Texas, with a nice amount of finances, nice amount of equipment, I really do think that the ceiling, it's up there. It's high. It's going to be a difficult ceiling to see, and it's a difficult ceiling to hit. But it's definitely possible to do the latter. You hope you never see the ceiling, right? You hope you never hit that ceiling. You just keep rising. But to me, Tremaine Jackson I love what Tremaine Jackson is doing. I love the boastfulness. I love the confidence. I love the directness, right? And he's not just calling out players. He's changing. What we are seeing right now with Tremaine Jackson, and this isn't something that you see often. This is not something that you see every year. This is not something that you see with every new head coach. Most of the times, this is behind the scenes. But what we are seeing on very much so Front Street is Tremaine Jackson building a culture at Prairie View A&M. Whether it's recruiting and building up talent and gathering everybody and building talent through the transfer portal primarily, and only having one guy from high school. If it's that, having the top recruiting class in the SWAC, or maybe it's just about the mentality. And he says, listen, some of the guys from the previous regime tried to stay around. We realized they were not fits. So we only have about 20 or so players from the last season of Prairie View A&M football. So whether it's reshaping the roster, whether it's how you're constructing new additions, whether it's talking to the boasters, like we have to be honest here. Okay, listen. Tremaine Jackson says everybody has to be more disciplined. It's not just a player problem. It's a bottom-up problem. The fans got to be more disciplined. The donors have to be more disciplined and not donate with the intent to control. So everybody has to be more disciplined. It's not every year. It's not every hiring cycle that you see a culture being built in front of you before players even step on the field. It's rare, but we're seeing that with Tremaine Jackson. You're hearing him talk about the mentality. That's something you hear coaches talk about a lot. But that donor comment, to me, said everything I needed to. He said, donate your money. We do need it. I won't shun that. But please do not try to control when you donate. Hopefully that doesn't ruffle any feathers, because some people get sensitive when it comes to matters of their money. Well, if I'm going to do this, then you better do that. I don't think that Tremaine Jackson has a problem ruffling feathers. I heard him call out Brian Kelly. I heard him talk about million rules that you need to have. Very direct. I don't think he has a problem ruffling feathers. Tremaine Jackson has built a culture around roster construction, coaching. He said, I'm a D2 guy. This is how we're going to operate. Something as small as not putting out the roster, which as a media guy, I hate, but I get it. This is a culture. This is what he's doing. This is who he is. I could go down the list. Dog mentality. I love the way that you're recruiting, publicizing your recruit, creating an environment of excellence, talking to the donors on how you're going to donate your money. Don't control me. Just donate and let me work my magic. You can have the suits. It's everything, guys. It's everything. Ain't that what Dochi said? It's everything, okay? You don't know what it is. For me, this is exactly what you need to do. And I'll close it out with this comment right here. Tremaine Jackson has been a man of many quotes. He has been a walking soundbite since becoming the Prairie View A&M head coach, whether that's through Twitter and just typing things or whether that's saying things out loud. But this may be one of my favorites. Tremaine Jackson says, I'm not talking big. I'm telling you what's going to happen. And mind you, he's saying that when he's talking about becoming a championship team. In my opinion, the comments that Tremaine Jackson has done multiple times over this offseason has put a spotlight on PV. I think it has helped with their recruiting from him just being himself publicly and privately. And then once the season starts, he's talking like a man who doesn't need a warm-up. Typically, I give you a season as a new head coach. Tremaine Jackson ain't talking like he needs that at all. Oh my gosh. I can't wait. I'll see you week 1, Coach Jackson. I'll see you week 1, Labor Day Classic, Prairie View A&M, Texas Southern. Something tells me this is not our last time talking about PV. It's just the last time that we'll be talking about them in June as we move into July tomorrow. Speaking of moving on, I want to go into a Mailbag Monday. I want to respond to some comments, and let's roll with this on a new segment as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Maybe you put some money on UFC 317. Did you think that Do Bronx was going to come up with the title? Well, unfortunately for you, he got knocked out in the first round. It was a big-time fight. You had Joshua Van. If you put some money down on significant strikes between him and Brandon Royval, oh my gosh, it was a wonderful night of fights. It just was a wonderful night of fights. As a guy who loves MMA, I loved that pay-per-view from start to finish, excuse me. But you could make some money on it. You ain't got to be a lover of MMA. Be a lover of money. That's a different him. All right? Put some money down on MMA, on FanDuel. Maybe you do it on baseball. Whatever your sport is. Wimbledon starts today, I believe. So either starts today or next Friday, something like that. So many things. You have another UFC event coming up in the middle of July. Go make some money. Go make some money and do it at FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL. If you're anything like me, you are excited for the NFL season, though it's still about 10 weeks away if you're talking about the regular season. But if you're like me, training camp is the beginning of the season, and that's just 3 weeks away. So let's get it. Speaking of let's get it, I want to continue rolling with a new segment. This is a Mailbag Monday, so I love how many comments that you guys drop. Everydayers, thank you so much for every comment that you drop. I know I don't answer them as often as I probably should, but I want to change that, specifically change the way that I do it. I want to go through on the weekends, and I want to find comments or questions. You can DM me, you can tweet me. I want to start doing Mailbag Mondays, and we're going to try this out as we roll through the summer. So I have 4 comments that popped up from last week's episode. Forgive me for not being able to have the names for all of these. Actually, I can get close. You have Emmanuel Sears 5610. He says Hagans didn't have to deal with the quarterback circuit like Brown, being Cornelius Brown IV. Brown was the better quarterback last year, yet Coach Maynard didn't want to stop playing Langford from last year because he wanted to prove a point that he can win with any quarterback. But if Brown was to get the whole year to play, he would have had more stats than Hagens. Okay, Emmanuel. This is in response, and I think I have one more that's in response to this, but this was in response to me saying I thought Hagens would have been the representative. I have a rule, and I think we all have certain rules, certain stipulations that we tend to go by. And for me, if you get brought in the spring or after the spring, specifically at quarterback, they believe that you are here to start. I do not believe that has a 100% success rate. Look at FAMU, even though they're disqualified. They brought in too many people. So, one of them could start. Would I be right? Kind of not. But for the most part, I view late additions. I'm talking April, May. If you're a quarterback and you get added around that time, I do believe that school is viewing you as a more than likely starter. And if you are the guy who was already on the roster taking all of the spring reps, then you are probably the guy who they're saying isn't quite enough or we're not sold on. It doesn't mean that you are without a shot of getting in, but it does mean that now I'm going on a tangent. I just think that Hagens has this job or is the front runner for this job because he came in later. They saw what they saw in Brown and they weren't sold. So they went to go get Hagens. That's the reason I think Hagens has the lead. That being said, it does not mean, and I think Cornelius Brown's inclusion in SWAC Media Day proves this, it does not mean that the battle has already been sold. It does not mean that the battle is already given to Hagens. I completely believe that this is a true contest, that this is a true competition. Did I believe that before I saw Cornelius Brown IV being included in SWAC Media Day? No, I didn't. But what kind of media personality would I be if I was so stubborn that I couldn't change my mind due to new information? And I know you probably seen quite a few who do that, but it ain't me. It ain't me. So, let's keep rolling. Dude said 779577 said, don't know why there's still a discussion about body. Has he ever played a complete season? Yes. Let's answer that question right there. Yes, he has. It was a while ago, but he has done it. In 2022, Andrew Body played an entire season. He got hurt the last game of the season. Yes. It was like the last 2-3 series of the game. You don't know why it's still a discussion about body. I think that it is because I've said this before. I'll say it again, but this was an interesting comment. To me, the jury to me, the jury is still out on Andrew Body. There was so much hype after the 2022 season, and all he has done is play 2 games since then. I think that he has looked good in both games. I think in that first game of the season in 2023, he looked really good, and I think he looked really bad. But the truth of the matter is, Andrew Body, I never got to see what Andrew Body was after that first season of setting expectations. I never got to see him in year 2 as a starter. That's why it's still a discussion, because to me, SWAC quarterback play is not great. It isn't. And I think that he can be a really good quarterback. In a conference of not really good quarterbacks, being a really good quarterback elevates your team dramatically. That is why we are still talking about Andrew Body. If he comes out and he lays an egg throughout the season, throughout multiple games, then I will change my tune. But I just don't see it happening. Next question. Let's keep it on Bama State. It was 2 Bama State questions. Look, it's put up. Who said this? Jay-Z Real Carey? I think that's how you say it. 7860 said, look, it's put up or shut up time for them Bamas. Coach is the most senior leader of the teams in the SWAC, and he has nothing to show for it. For example, Southern's Coach Graves, in his first year, a division champ. Now, I know people will say the competition is tougher in Bama's division, but Coach E-Rob is starting to be looked at in a jaundiced eye. It's definitely tougher. Let's be very clear. Eddie Robinson has had to deal with Deion Sanders and Willie Simmons throughout the majority of his time. He's had to deal with juggernauts in his division. Southern just didn't. the SWAC West has not been that good for a few years now. So I do think that plays a part, but I'm not going to excuse it altogether. I'm just not. I think that there is still something to be viewed here. And yes, I do think that the pressure is on them. Last year, TC Taylor came and snatched that crown. I think the crown was for the taking. I don't believe that Alabama State had the proper, I don't think they had the proper circumstances to take that crown, but it was for the taking. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is Bobby Harris 3426 says, and he disagrees with me because I didn't like the fact that I think it was a punter or maybe it was a kicker. I'm gonna say it was a kicker because he says kicker here, but he says, bro, no offense. You know, I was ready for the offense, but it never came. He actually really wasn't offensive. Bro, no offense. If the kicker is one of the best players on the team, he earned that reason to go to SWAC Media Day because special teams is a very important part of the game. It can win or lose you games. No offense. I appreciate this, Bobby. You really didn't want me to be offended, and I'm not. Okay. Bobby really didn't want me to be offended, and I'm not because we disagreed, or we don't even disagree. I agree with everything Bobby said. I just disagree with the point he's trying to refute. That's it. I didn't want to say the guy's name because I didn't want to be disrespectful and make it seem like he's not a big part of the game. I think special teams are very important. Special teams just aren't the representative of my school. That's it. That's it. I'm just not using them to represent my school. Like, think about it. Think about it. Go through the best kickers that you've known as of recent, or just go through the best kickers that you've known, period. Maybe you're older than I am. Maybe you have better memory than I am, though we're the same age. How many times has the kicker been the face of a good team? Adam Vinatieri was very clutch. He was not the face of the Patriots. Not to me. He did not represent that team. He was a huge part of the team. But as far as being a representative, think about it. Just go to high school. Your kicker could be the 1D1 player on that school. There's a good chance. Your kicker could be the best player on multiple teams. But if you're talking about who's going to be the face and representative of that school, of that university, of that high school, of that professional team, most times it's not the kicker. And I don't mean that to be any disrespect. It's just that some positions, and really just kicker and punter, are not the type of positions that tend to represent good teams. They just aren't. If your kicker is your SWAC Media Day representative, I would say 9 times out of 10, you don't have any stars. And that is probably the case here. I didn't want to get specific to be disrespectful. But anyway, as you push forward, Norfolk State, and we're going to be very quick about this, Norfolk State is expected to take a step back. As they push forward into 2026. And I kind of surprised by this, but not all the way. Let's explain my confusion as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Norfolk State is expected to take a step back next year. And in saying that, when talking about their basketball team, you would probably assume I was speaking about the women. It'd be a safe assumption. It'd be a smart assumption. And it'd probably be a pretty right assumption that they would take a step back. Diamond Johnson to the league, Kiera Wheeler to the P4 level, Larry Vickers, head coach, out of there. So it's a lot of the biggest stars, the big 3 out of there. The only part that you would be wrong is in assuming that's who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the women. I'm not talking about the Lady Spartans. I am talking about the men's basketball team, and they're keeping Robert Jones. And Robert Jones is a man who would probably be pretty upset with the fact that they're already being predicted to take a step back. I do understand it, though I completely understand. I don't even know if I'm conflicted. Disappointed, but not conflicted. I'm disappointed in the sense that Norfolk State wasn't, I ain't gonna say they didn't do good, but they didn't hit what they thought they should have hit last year. They were a 16 seed who thought they should have been a 15 seed. The step back is that they are still going to be a 16 seed, but instead of outright getting into the tournament, they are predicted to be a play-in team, to be a part of the first 4 matchups. I don't hate it. I actually really like the first 4. It's just not real March Madness to me. If you're anything like, and I know you're like, why are we talking about March Madness right now? That's because Joe Lunardi had a bracketology in the middle of June predicting what will happen in March of next year. So we're talking about what, 9 months in advance? But when that's your baby, that's about the right timing that it takes. And I'm a football head. As soon as the Super Bowl is over, give me about 3-4 days, maybe a week, I'm ready to start talking about next year, unless my team won the Super Bowl. And then we can all shut up for the next 5 months, if you ask me. But he predicting that the Spartans will move into a play-in role, into a first 4 role in next year. They'll be going up against Central Connecticut State. And this is a bit of a step down, but I understand it because the Spartans lost Brian Moore Jr. And when you lose a player of his caliber who was just not nominated, announced as the Virginia SID Player of the Year, the best player in the state, when you lose a guy like that and he goes to Grand Canyon, it's a big blow. Averaging 19 points per game, has double digits in all but one game. Nearly half of his game were 20-point games. Or about a third of his, probably like a third. No, almost half. Yeah, almost half. 13 out of 31. So almost half of his games were 20-point games. And that's not even counting the other players that just graduated. A guy like Christian Ings, who was a big part of that team as well. I get it. You're losing talent for Norfolk State, but that's the name of the game when it comes to college athletics. People lose talent. Will Norfolk State be able to bounce back? Will they be able to rebound? They're still predicted to win the MEAC. They're still predicted to win the MEAC. They're just not predicted to be a dominant team. They're not predicted to have the same season they had this year. They're going to be in the first 4. And I like the first 4. I really do, if you win. Because it brings more money to you, brings more money to the conference. It's an easier game to win. So I think that is a better payoff, a better situation. I think that is really good. The only problem is it ain't real March Madness to me. And I know they're talking about expanding it. This does nothing. They're talking about expanding the March Madness from 68 teams to 76 teams. It's going to have probably more. I think it's going to end up with 8 more teams who get in. But even if you have more mid-majors get in, the SWAC and MEAC are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to net rankings and things like that. Do not expect a change or an expansion to ever benefit a team in the situation that the MEAC and the SWAC are in. They just don't have great net. They don't do well in out of conference. So I don't think that they'll benefit from an expansion to where they can get 2. They'll probably still remain a single qualified conference. Anyway, Monday is in the books. Wednesday, we'll be back again. Gosh, I pre-recorded earlier. I miss it. I'm happy to be back. On Wednesday, we'll be talking about the FCS ability to play 12 games and how the HBCUs can take advantage of it in 4 different ways. 4 different ways, and each way is the best way to take advantage of it in a specific category. I can't wait for Monday. I can't wait for Wednesday. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear to the family, take care, stay blessed, and hopefully by next time you see me, I'll have something done up. Or by the end of next week, I have something done up. So I look better out here, better backgrounds. In the meantime, in between time, till next time we hear to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.